Old Hollywood mansions may not be as large or lavish as many celebrities' homes today, but considering their size and cost during the time in which they were built, they're still impressive. Often located on acres of property, many featured amenities like swimming pools, tennis courts, and even golf courses. Residents and their guests could make use of dozens of bathrooms, bedrooms, and private screening rooms for their films. From acres of gardens and stables to garages large enough to hold an entire fleet of cars, here are the estates that provide an appropriate setting for Hollywood's larger-than-life elite to spend their days and nights. Buster Keaton built his wife a nearly 11,000-square-foot mansion with $14,000 worth of palm trees. Silent film legend Buster Keaton built his Beverly Hills home in 1926, 1 block away from the Beverly Hills Hotel, where he lived with his wife Natalie Talmadge. Their newly built home measured nearly 11,000 square feet and sat on 3.5 acres. Containing 20 rooms, it resembled Italian and Spanish villas, with wrought iron, stonework, and arched glass. There was a 5-foot-wide fireplace and a room with a pool table and a hidden bar that could be converted into a screening room. Keaton's property also held a tennis court, a swimming pool built to resemble a Roman bath, and an aviary. Among the gardens outside, he built a trout stream and planted 42 palm trees, which cost a total of $14,000. Talmadge kept the estate when she and Keaton divorced in 1932, and she became the owner of the property. The house saw many visitors, counting Cary Grant and James Mason among those who lived with Keaton's former wife there. In 2016, Keaton's estate was finally reassembled by new owners who purchased the $16.2 million property. Henry E. Huntington spent $240,000 for more than 500 acres in 1903. Henry Huntington made a fortune in real estate and railroads, and in 1903 he purchased 600 acres of land in San Marino for $240,000. In 1905, he began planning the design of his enormous home, commissioning an architect to carry out his vision 3 years later. After its completion in 1911, Huntington's 55,000-square-foot house took on the look of Spanish and Italian Renaissance homes with its porte-cochere entryway and many classical ornamentations. The estate featured an 8,000-square-foot garage and a private railroad spur to accommodate deliveries. There were several large gardens, and Huntington purchased a Japanese tea garden originally located in Pasadena, relocating it onto his property. Living in the home with his second wife Arabella, Huntington amassed a large collection of expensive art, which he assembled into a gallery inside his home after she perished in 1924. After Huntington passed in 1927, his collection, as well as his entire home, were open to the public as a gallery, now known as the Huntington Art Gallery. Starlet Myrna Loy had numerous gardens and a lake-like swimming pool. Although actress Myrna Loy once claimed, "We have no ballroom, no game room, no projection room, no elaborate bar," the home that she and her husband shared was still more than impressive. Known as Lime Orchard, the house sat in Pacific Palisades off Sunset Boulevard. What it lacked in indoor amenities, it made up for with the grounds. With an English garden, lime orchard, swimming pool built to resemble a lake, and a tennis court built on the side of a hill, there was much to enjoy. Loy enjoyed growing food in their gardens and taking care of their hundreds of varieties of roses. She also built a bathhouse near the orchard to remind her of her days as a young girl. The couple's servants also had their own quarters on the property, and the staff included a cook, 7 gardeners, a chauffeur, and a variety of maids, including one who was employed solely to do laundry. Louis B. Mayer bought his daughter, Edie, the mansion that would become one of Hollywood's biggest party spots. Edie Goetz was the daughter of Louis B. Mayer, co-founder of MGM, and he bought her a house in Los Angeles' ritzy Holmby Hills neighborhood. She and her husband, producer William Goetz, turned their lavish home into one of Hollywood's biggest party pads. Built in 1938, the estate contains 2 swimming pools and 3 guest houses on the 2.16-acre property, in addition to the almost 20,000-square-foot main residence. The interior features 9 baths, 11 bedrooms, a private screening room, and an Art Deco library and bar. There was so much space for guests that Frank Sinatra and Mia Farrow held their wedding reception at the home in 1966. After William perished in 1969, Edie lived in the house alone until her passing in 1988. Former Disney CFO Gary L. Wilson then purchased the home and combined it with a neighboring property to total 4.39 acres. The property was later divided again and sold, and investor Nicholas Berggruen purchased the main house and one guest house in 2017 for more than $40 million. Charlton Heston's 9,700-square-foot home recently sold for $12.2 million. Built in 1959, Charlton Heston's former home sat on 3 acres above Coldwater Canyon in Beverly Hills. That year was big for the actor. He won an Oscar for his performance in Ben-Hur, and the newly built house would be his home for the rest of his life. The mid-century modern-style mansion is almost 9,700 square feet and sits on a hillside, allowing those inside to look over the land through the home's many glass walls. Boasting an open floor-plan living room, the house features 6 bathrooms, 5 bedrooms, a 2-story library, a bar built out of marble, and a large fireplace. Outside, a pool and terrace, a tennis pavilion, and a screening room all provide areas for entertainment. There's even a gated driveway big enough to hold 10 cars. Heston also put together an art studio housed in a 3-story building with an elevator. After Heston passed in 2008, his family held onto the home until putting it up for sale in 2016. The house sold for $12.2 million, reportedly purchased by director Luc Besson. William Randolph Hearst gifted his mistress a 100-room beachfront mansion. In addition to newspaper mogul William Randolph Hearst's famous castle in San Simeon, California, he also built a home for his mistress, actress Marion Davies, with whom he was having an affair. In the early 1920s, he purchased property along the Pacific Coast Highway in Santa Monica to build Davies her palace, and she became one of the many wealthy celebrities to own land on what was becoming known as the Gold Coast. Hearst bought 15 plots of land along the ocean and combined them into one property that totaled 5 acres. Construction on Ocean House began in 1926, and when it was complete, the Georgian Revival-style structure boasted more than 100 rooms, including a ballroom, a banquet room, and a complete tavern. Guests most likely had little difficulty finding a bathroom since there were 55, and they could easily stay warm in front of one of 36 fireplaces. Outside, the mansion featured a 110-foot-long pool, tennis courts, gardens, and houses for the staff. Hearst reportedly spent $7 million on the house, with only $3 million of the costs going toward actual construction. The rest of the budget went to pay for furnishings. The expense was reportedly worth it, however, since Ocean House became one of the era's premier party places for Hollywood's elite. Davies sold the house in 1947 to Joseph Drown, who turned the property into an exclusive hotel and the Sand and Sea Club. Although the Sand and Sea Club continued to operate, the main house was torn down in 1956, and the property was sold to the state of California several years later. After the 1994 Northridge earthquake wrecked all of the structures on the property, the city of Santa Monica decided to convert the property into a community area. With the funding help of the Annenberg Foundation, they created the Annenberg Community Beach House at Santa Monica State Beach, which opened to the public in 2009. Rudolph Valentino hid away in what he deemed the Falcon Lair. Silent film heartthrob. Rudolph Valentino purchased a home above Beverly Hills for himself and his wife in 1925. Built in 1923, the 16-room home sat on 8 acres, which Valentino filled with a large garage for his many cars, quarters for his staff, kennels for his dogs, and stables for his prized horses. The 2-story house was designed in a Spanish villa style with a red tile roof, stucco walls, wood beam ceilings, and multiple fireplaces. Since he and his wife were in the process of planning a film about El Cid called The Hooded Falcon, they named their new home Falcon Lair. Filled with lavish decorations and antiques, the home became the perfect place for Valentino to escape his hordes of fans. Unfortunately, Valentino's marriage fell apart not long after they moved into Falcon Lair. In his depression, he built a tall stone wall and imposing gate around the house. After Valentino perished from peritonitis in 1926, a diamond broker purchased the house for $145,000. The house changed hands several times after that, with stories surfacing about Valentino's ghost haunting the property. Tobacco heiress Doris Duke purchased the home in 1953 and lived there until she passed in 1993. Although people tried to renovate Falcon Lair, it was torn down for good and the property was broken up in 2005. However, the stable and staff house still stood and were purchased, renovated, and put up for sale in 2018 for $29.5 million. Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks's Pickfair Mansion popularized swimming pools in 1919. In 1919, old Hollywood power couple Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks purchased 15 acres of land on Summit Drive in Beverly Hills for $35,000. The property was previously uninhabited, aside from a small hunting shack until the two silent film stars began building their dream mansion. They hired Wallace Neff to design their home, which boasted huge gardens, a copper roof, and 22 rooms. Pickford and Fairbanks also installed a swimming pool, one of the first to be built in Los Angeles. They named their home Pickfair, and not only did they inspire other wealthy people to buy land in the Beverly Hills area, but the couple also helped start the trend of people building private swimming pools beside their homes. Pickfair also became a place many Hollywood celebrities came to let loose, and it hosted many famous guests, including Fatty Arbuckle, Charlie Chaplin, and even Albert Einstein. In 1930, Pickford and Douglas added 2 more wings to their mansion. The extra space became useful as their relationship fell apart, and the couple reportedly claimed their own wings to limit their contact with one another. After their 1936 divorce, Pickford maintained control of the house and divided the property into smaller units before she passed in 1979. 1 year later, the owner of the LA Lakers, Jerry Buss, reportedly purchased the house and the then 2.7-acre property for $5,362,500 before he sold it in 1988 to actress-singer Pia Zadora and her wealthy husband, Meshulam Riklis. While Buss made few updates to the house, Zadora had other ideas. After reportedly paying $6,675,000, the couple said they would preserve and restore Pickfair, but instead tore it down, claiming the house was infested with termites and possibly ghosts. Zadora and Riklis built a new home on the property that featured a disco and salon. It was put on the market in 2008 for $60 million. Audrey Hepburn lived in a mansion that would later be owned by Eva Gabor. Audrey Hepburn's famous Holmby Hills home was also owned by several other celebrities, including Mia Farrow, David Niven, and most famously, Eva Gabor. Built in 1938, the house measured nearly 7,000 square feet and featured 4 bathrooms and 6 bedrooms. Outside, residents and guests could make use of a pool, tennis court, and gardens. Visitors had their own separate guest house, and servants lived in their own quarters with separate dining and living areas, as well as 2 bathrooms. Upon walking past columns and flower boxes outside the main doors, visitors to the main house entered a large foyer with a hanging chandelier and curved staircase. Glass walls allowed those inside to look out over the grounds, which totaled 1.1 acres. Hepburn and her first husband, Mel Ferrer, lived in the house beginning in 1960, but Gabor stayed there the longest, from the mid-1970s until her passing in 1995. Afterward, Gabor's family sold the property for $2 million. In 2017, the house was again for sale, this time for $14 million. Media mogul Harry Warner's estate was the future home of Marilyn Monroe. Warner Brothers co-founder Harry Warner built his home in 1923 on 1.25 acres in Beverly Hills. The 13,000-square-foot main residence was designed in a Georgian colonial style and featured 14 rooms. The property also featured a lagoon with a waterfall, a tennis court, a European garden, and a gated cobblestone drive. Warner built a guest house on the property, which housed many famous celebrities over the years, including Marilyn Monroe. As a movie mogul, Warner needed to be able to watch movies, so he created a screening room in the basement. The house boasted 10 bathrooms and was decorated with etched glass windows, an indoor-outdoor bar, and a hand-carved fireplace. While the house and property still stand today, Warner sold it to help pay for the jazz singer in 1927. It went through a number of owners and served as a stand-in for O.J. Simpson's home in the FX miniseries The People vs. O.J. Simpson. In 2017, it was up for sale with an asking price of around $36 million. Alla Nazimova helped build the Garden of Allah, one of old Hollywood's most notorious party spots. In 1918, actress Alla Nazimova began renting a 40-room mansion on Sunset Boulevard, for which she paid $50,000. She quickly began developing the 3.5 acres on which the house sat, and built a swimming pool larger than any other in Hollywood at the time. Celebrities gathered at the house to relax or have parties, and when financial troubles forced Nazimova to sell the mansion in the 1920s, the parties didn't end. Developers turned the house into a 30-bungalow hotel named the Garden of Allah. Not only did celebrities gather to party there, but many also claimed the hotel as their residence. Marlene Dietrich, Humphrey Bogart, and Errol Flynn all called the Garden of Allah home at one time, among many other famous guests. Alcohol, controlled substances, and love flowed freely, and stories about what went on fueled gossip columns for years. Although she no longer owned the hotel, Nazimova rented a room there until her passing in 1945. After World War II, the Garden of Allah fell into disrepair and attracted more seedy residents. It finally closed in 1959, and the building was demolished. Harold Lloyd spent his silent film fortune on the Greenacres estate. As one of the biggest silent movie comedians of his time, Harold Lloyd flaunted his success when he bought 11 acres of Benedict Canyon property in 1923 for $100,000. He then paid $39,000 for 4 more acres of neighboring property to combine into 15 acres. Construction of a new home began in 1926 and ended up costing around $2 million. The estate included a 9-hole golf course, complete with a canoe pond and a clubhouse that resembled an old mill, a waterfall, an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and 12 separate gardens. Even Lloyd's daughter received her own separate 4-room cottage with a barn in which she could play. The 36,000-square-foot house boasted 44 rooms. Lloyd decorated the interior with things that were either antique or custom-made. He employed more than 30 servants to run the home and property, which included his own telephone line. The family officially moved into the house in 1929, holding a 3-day party to celebrate. Lloyd named his property Greenacres in 1936 and lived there until his passing in 1971. Although Lloyd wanted his house to be turned into a museum after he passed, monetary problems forced the family to give it up. It was auctioned off in 1975 and purchased for $1.6 million by a developer who leveled most of what Lloyd had built, divided up the property, and let the mansion fall into abandoned ruin. Jane Mansfield's 25-room pink palace literally glistened in the sun. Actress Jane Mansfield's famous home at 10,100 Sunset Boulevard became a large part of her brand, so much so that it was named the Pink Palace. She purchased the house for $74,000 with husband and former Mr. Universe Mickey Hargitay after they married in 1958. Mansfield quickly redesigned the home, originally built in the 1920s, in her style, using her favorite color, pink. Mansfield and Hargitay built a pink stone wall to surround their 3.5-acre property and installed a tall metal gate that featured JM inside a heart. Mansfield's home drew so much attention that gawkers would often gather and cause traffic jams outside. The Pink Palace famously featured a heart-shaped swimming pool that Hargitay built himself and decorated with tiles that spelled out, "I love you, Janie," on the bottom. The exterior walls of the house were painted pink with quartz mixed in to reflect sunlight and sparkle. The interior of the home was lavishly decorated with cupids, hearts, and the color pink. It featured a bathroom with the floor and walls covered entirely in pink shag carpeting and a heart-shaped tub. A champagne fountain could also be found inside. Mansfield and Hargitay claimed that their house featured 25 rooms, 11 of which were bathrooms. After Mansfield perished in a car accident in 1967, the house was sold numerous times, and owners reportedly included Ringo Starr and Mama Cass. Engelbert Humperdinck lived in the palace for 17 years before selling it to a neighbor in 2002. The buyer owned a property named Owlwood, which sat behind Mansfield's house and was previously occupied by Tony Curtis, as well as Sonny and Cher. The Owlwood owner ended up tearing down Mansfield's former home, as well as the former home of another legendary neighbor, Esther Williams, to make the most of his now 10-acre property. Frances Marion and Fred Thompson built their dream house on Enchanted Hill. Screenwriter Frances Marion and her husband, silent actor Fred Thompson, purchased around 24 acres of land in Beverly Hills and built their home on it in 1927. They named their property Enchanted Hill, and along with their Spanish colonial mansion, they built stables for Thompson's horses, gardens, a swimming pool, and a tennis court. It sat high on a hill above Benedict Canyon on Angelo Drive, giving the couple a great view of their property and the surrounding land. Unfortunately, the couple was unable to enjoy their home together for long, as Thompson stepped on a rusty nail and developed tetanus, which soon ended his life. Distraught, Marion sold the property in 1929 for $540,000. The estate changed hands several times, and later owners purchased additional land until the property reached 120 acres. Paul Allen, co-founder of Microsoft, purchased the property for $20 million in 1997 and tore down the original house. He then built himself a 50,000-square-foot house. As of 2019, the property is for sale for $110 million, complete with its own website. Clark Gable and Carol Lombard's 20-acre ranch was a peaceful escape in the San Fernando Valley. Screen legend Clark Gable purchased a ranch in the Encino area of the San Fernando Valley in the mid-1930s, reputedly paying around $50,000 for nearly 20 acres. Seeking an escape from the hustle of Hollywood, Gable and his wife Carol Lombard transformed the plot of land into a pastoral retreat, where they could enjoy a quieter life alongside their horses, dogs, and livestock. The main house was a modest, ranch-style residence, reflecting Gable's preference for a simpler, more rustic living environment. However, the property featured ample space for entertaining. Lush gardens and a long tree-lined driveway greeted guests, while open fields around the house preserved the couple's sense of seclusion. Carol Lombard added personal touches, including a small orchard and a vegetable garden, catering to her love of fresh produce and the laid-back California lifestyle. Tragically, Lombard passed in a plane crash in 1942, leaving Gable devastated. He continued to hold on to the ranch for some time, finding solace in the privacy it offered. Over the years, the property changed hands several times, and certain areas were subdivided for later development. Although much of the original acreage has been reduced, portions of the land still retain the ambiance and rural charm of old Encino, quietly paying homage to two of Hollywood's most beloved stars. Errol Flynn's Mulholland farm became a legendary hangout. Swashbuckling actor, Errol Flynn was known for his adventurous spirit, both on screen and off, and his Mulholland farm estate became the site of many Hollywood tales. Built in 1941 atop the winding roads of Mulholland Drive, Flynn's residence spanned roughly 11 acres. The home itself, designed in a ranch-meet-Spanish style, showcased stucco walls, tiled roofs, and large windows overlooking the expansive property. Renowned for his wild parties, Flynn purportedly added hidden panels and secret passages within the home, fueling decades of rumors about the lavish and sometimes scandalous events that took place there. Beyond the intrigue, Mulholland Farm boasted luxurious amenities for its day, including a swimming pool set against sweeping canyon views, horse stables, and a private guest cottage. Flynn also constructed a modest screening area, ensuring he and his entourage could preview the latest films without leaving his hillside haven. Following Flynn's financial struggles and eventual passing in 1959, the property changed owners multiple times, gradually succumbing to neglect. Subsequent renovations aimed to capture the aura of Hollywood's golden era while modernizing its amenities. Portions of the original acreage were sold off, and the main house itself underwent significant changes. Today, echoes of Flynn's storied parties remain an integral part of Mulholland Drive lore, as the estate's reputation still draws curious fans of Hollywood history. Carole Lombard's Bel Air residence reflected her personal style. Although she shared a ranch in Encino with Clark Gable, Carole Lombard also owned a Bel Air estate at the height of her career. Purchased in the late 1930s, the home was nestled among the exclusive foothills and measured around 6,000 square feet. Lombard opted for an elegant yet comfortable design, decorating the interiors with plush furnishings, Art Deco touches, and soft pastel tones. The manicured grounds were a highlight of the estate. Flower beds edged the driveway, and a small koi pond added a tranquil element to the yard. While the Bel Air house lacked some of the more ostentatious features popular with other celebrities, like private screening rooms or golf courses, its tasteful decor and scenic views spoke to Lombard's refined taste. She occasionally hosted intimate gatherings for close friends, preferring more relaxed social events to the lavish Hollywood soirees of the day. After her untimely passing, the property was sold and changed hands numerous times. Some owners chose to remodel or expand, adding amenities that were more in line with modern luxury living. Despite these changes, glimpses of Lombard's original style remain in the home's architectural details, preserving a part of her understated glamour for future generations to appreciate. Now, what actually happened to these mansions after their owners? Some remain standing in all their glory, transformed into museums or community spaces. Others have been torn down, subdivided, or renovated beyond recognition. Through their many owners, lavish parties, and sometimes tumultuous financial histories, these estates each tell a story of old Hollywood's grandeur. Buster Keaton's 11,000-square-foot mansion. After Buster Keaton's divorce from Natalie Talmadge in 1932, she remained in the ornate Beverly Hills estate they once shared. Over the years, it hosted not only prominent Hollywood figures, but eventually saw various changes to the property lines. Keaton's original acreage ended up subdivided, and the house passed through different hands, among them Cary Grant and James Mason, who each made small modifications while living there. In 2016, a new set of owners famously reassembled the property, buying adjacent lots to restore a sense of the original 3.5 acres, and purchased it for $16.2 million. Today, the estate retains much of its Italian-Spanish charm, although layers of modern renovations have been integrated. Henry E. Huntington's 55,000-square-foot estate. Henry Huntington's grand residence in San Marino escaped the fate of so many other old estates. Rather than being demolished or transformed into a private compound, it became a cultural landmark. After Huntington's death in 1927, his extensive art collection and the mansion itself were open to the public, forming the cornerstone of what is now the Huntington Library, Art Museum, and Botanical Gardens. Myrna Loy's Lime Orchard Estate. While Myrna Loy's Pacific Palisades home was overshadowed in notoriety by some of the larger Beverly Hills mansions, it remained a hidden gem of the Golden Age. After Loy moved on, the property passed through various hands, each making modifications to the tennis court, built on a hillside, and the lake-like swimming pool. Although additions like screening rooms or game rooms were never introduced, the property was meticulously maintained for many decades. Today, the estate's biggest draws remain its lush English gardens and the original lime orchard. Louis B. Mayer's gift to Edie Goetz. Edie Goetz's Holmby Hills mansion became a legendary party spot, hosting wedding receptions for icons like Frank Sinatra and Mia Farrow. Following Edie's passing in 1988, the property underwent a series of ownership changes, eventually being combined with a neighboring parcel to form a sprawling 4.39 acres. Parts of that combined land were sold off again, fracturing the original setting. Most recently, Nicholas Berggruin bought the main house and one of the guest houses for over $40 million. Charlton Heston's mid-century modern hideaway. Sprawled atop 3 acres above Coldwater Canyon, Charlton Heston's iconic home stood witness to his prolific Hollywood career from 1959 until his death in 2008. Although modest by some contemporary celebrity standards, the mansion's open floor plan, glass walls, and two-story library drew the attention of multiple potential buyers once the property was put on the market. Purchased in 2016 for $12.2 million, reportedly by director Luc Besson, the house underwent renovations to preserve its mid-century modern flair while updating mechanical systems and outdoor spaces. William Randolph Hearst's Ocean House for Marion Davies. If there was ever a dwelling that matched the extravagance of Hearst Castle, it was the 100-room beachfront mansion constructed for Marion Davies in Santa Monica. Known as Ocean House, it gained renown for its lavish parties, 55 bathrooms, and 36 fireplaces. By 1947, however, Davies sold the property, leading to its transformation into the Sand and Sea Club. Subsequent owners eventually tore down much of the original building in 1956, and lingering structures suffered severe damage from the 1994 Northridge earthquake. Rudolph Valentino's Falcon Lair. Among the most romanticized of Hollywood's early residences, Falcon Lair stood perched above Beverly Hills. After Valentino's passing in 1926, the property changed hands multiple times, acquiring a fabled aura thanks to rumors of a haunting. Tobacco heiress Doris Duke owned it for decades, but by the early 2000s, most of the original structures had deteriorated. In 2005, the mansion itself was torn down, with developers carving up the land. Pickfair, Mary Pickford, and Douglas Fairbanks's showpiece. Once heralded as the pinnacle of Hollywood glamour, Pickfair thrived as a star-studded party venue for decades. Following Pickford and Fairbanks's divorce, the mansion was gradually split into smaller units. By the time Jerry Buss bought it in 1980, much of the acreage had already been sold. When Pia Zadora and Meshulam Riklis obtained the property in 1988, they famously demolished the aging structure, citing termite damage and ghostly encounters. Audrey Hepburn's Holmby Hills Retreat. Audrey Hepburn's tranquil residence on Delphern Drive was notable for its understated elegance. Over the years, Mia Farrow, David Niven, and Eva Gabor each brought their own influences to the property, enlarging or modifying certain sections. Gabor, the longest-tenured owner, lived there until 1995. In time, the property was sold for $2 million, then returned to market in 2017 for a much higher $14 million price tag. Harry Warner's Georgian Colonial Estate. Despite its storied history and celebrity guests, including Marilyn Monroe in the property's guest house, Harry Warner's one-time home now primarily draws attention for its architecture and cameo appearances in modern media. After Warner sold it in 1927 to help finance the jazz singer, a series of owners upgraded the property's features, and it briefly served as a location for the FX series The People vs. O.J. Simpson. Listed for $36 million in 2017, the mansion retains the cobblestone drive, lagoon, and tennis court, but has seen its landscaping refreshed, with an emphasis on high-end privacy and security. Ala Nazimova's Garden of Allah. Renowned for raucous parties and rumored debauchery, the Garden of Allah started as Nazimova's private mansion before transforming into a bungalow-style hotel. By the 1950s, the once glamorous retreat had fallen into disrepair, attracting a more threadbare clientele and eventually closing in 1959. The building was then demolished and a strip mall rose in its place, much to the chagrin of Hollywood preservationists. Harold Lloyd's Greenacres. With 44 rooms and over a dozen gardens, Greenacres embodied silent film star Harold Lloyd's comedic success. The estate, however, proved difficult to maintain financially after Lloyd passed in 1971. Rather than becoming the museum Lloyd had envisioned, it was sold in 1975 for $1.6 million to a developer who removed many of its grand elements and subdivided the land. Although the mansion itself was left standing, it fell into neglect for some years, prompting concerns about preserving what remained. In recent decades, parts of Greenacres have been restored in pockets, but it is far from the original 15-acre showpiece Lloyd so lovingly designed. Jane Mansfield's Pink Palace. Once an eye-popping fixture on Sunset Boulevard, the Pink Palace underwent numerous transformations after Mansfield's untimely death in 1967. Ringo Starr and Mama Cass were briefly rumored owners or residents, and Engelbert Humperdinck lived in the property for nearly 2 decades. But ultimately, the new owner, who also held the neighboring estate, Owlwood, chose to demolish Mansfield's iconic pink walls in 2002 to merge the 2 parcels. While the site is now part of a grand 10-acre compound, only stories, and some preserved photographs, remain of the flamboyant heart-shaped pool and Mansfield's perennially pink decor, Francis Marion and Fred Thompson's Enchanted Hill. Enchanted Hill began as a dream estate for screenwriter Francis Marion and silent star Fred Thompson, but tragedy intervened when Thompson died from tetanus. Marion sold it soon after, and various owners added land over time, reaching as many as 120 acres. Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen later bought the property in 1997 for $20 million, raising the original structures to build a large 50,000-square-foot residence. In 2019, Enchanted Hill was placed on the market for $110 million, reflecting how the site, though drastically changed, retains an enduring desirability thanks to its location and storied past. Clark Gable and Carol Lombard's San Fernando Valley Ranch. Although less famous for opulence than some Beverly Hills estates, Clark Gable's Encino Ranch became a cherished refuge. After Lombard's tragic death, Gable kept the property for a time. Eventually, bits and pieces of the land were sold or developed, reducing the original 20 acres. Some of the ranch-style home's original features, such as the horse stables, have long since vanished, replaced by suburban neighborhoods. Yet traces of the rural charm that Gable prized can still be seen in a few remaining older structures and tree-lined driveways that evoke 1930s Encino. Errol Flynn's Mulholland Farm. Situated atop Mulholland Drive, Errol Flynn's estate became legendary for secret passages and scandalous soirees. Financial troubles forced Flynn to relinquish the home before his death in 1959. Over time, parts of the acreage were sold off for new construction, and periods of neglect left the house in disrepair. Restoration efforts eventually breathed new life into the property, though it was drastically reconfigured for modern tastes. The spirit of Flynn's Hollywood remains in the estate's mythology, carried on by historians and fans who recall the tall tales of his hillside parties. Carol Lombard's Bel Air residence. Carol Lombard's Bel Air haven was comparatively understated, though it did feature a koi pond and beautifully manicured gardens. Sold after her untimely passing, the property passed among multiple owners who modernized the interior and, in some cases, expanded the structure. However, key architectural details, like Art Deco flourishes, were often preserved as a tribute to Lombard's taste. While the property sits tucked away in one of Los Angeles's most exclusive enclaves, echoes of Lombard's graceful style remain in its pastel palette and intimate rather than ostentatious entertaining spaces.